This time I'll call the May 9th York County Council Workshop to order. And at this time, I'm recognizing management who will lead us in the budget portion of the agenda.
I'm going to recognize Kevin Madden, our county manager, treasurer, to make a presentation. And Trish Startup, I'm sorry, didn't mean to leave her out.
All right, good evening, council. We are coming before you tonight, the second budget workshop, to give you another update on the FY24 budget. So to begin with, I just kind of want to go over the budget now that everyone has their budget notebooks. Just kind of break it down even granular, if you will. So why do we even budget? Well, it's the law. We have to budget. It's not because the treasurer says we have to or anyone else. It's the law. And you'll see within your budget book that we presented a balanced budget, which the law says we have to do. Council has to adopt it, which is the process we're going through. And then it has to be the dates July 1st through June 30th. The budget has to identify the sources of revenue, and it also has to provide for the levy and collection of taxes. But another great asset about the budget is that it's a way to communicate to residents how the public money's being spent and what's being accomplished with those expenditures. And of course, if we don't budget, or as we go through the budget, it's a great process we use to continue to fund the services to our residents. So it's a great communication tool for residents to see how their taxes are being expended in the county. So as you can see in your budget notebook, balanced budget is revenues equals expenditures. And you can see in your notebook that we have a budget breakdown. You have the general fund operations, the general fund sheriff, general fund solicitor, and capital budgets. We have many funds, but these are the main funds, if you will. And these are also, this isn't the comprehensive list of all the funds, like I said, but these have the biggest impact on the millages. And we're gonna go over the capital projects today as well when Mr. Madden comes to the podium. So like I said, the budget has to be balanced, so the revenues have to equal the expenditures. And a great way to think about the revenues is, where does the money come from? So we analyze the trends. The finance department and management do a great job analyzing trends from previous years of different sources of revenues. So some of our revenues are taxes, like property tax accounts for 55% of our budget. There's items like permits that you'll see in there and the deed stamps, and those are volatile. But there's also revenues that we know. For example, we know how much ARPA funds we have. We know how much money we'll be getting for the local government fund. So those are just some examples of revenues that you'll see. If you turn in your budget notebook, you'll see the budget ordinance, and on page 1, it begins with the revenues. So if you're looking for revenues and the sources of those, that is your first page on the budget ordinance. And then as you continue, you'll see the appropriations, which are the expenditures. Make sure, one thing when Mr. Madden came to the county is that we don't budget 100% of our revenues because we do 3% appropriation of fund balance. And that's something that he started when he came to York County. I don't know if you want to.
The 3% is an approximation, and those of you who have been on council have heard me talk about this before. We know we have vacancies, and we're not going to be 100% full all year, so we don't tax everybody for 100% of our expenses. We have revenues about 3% less than expenses, with the expectation that we're going to have vacancies throughout the year. Now, as y'all are aware, our vacancies have been greater than we want them to be, and that's what's driven to our surpluses in the past. That's one of the main drivers of that. But we'll continue to do that, and that's the number we look at every year, where we think we're going to be at vacancies for the upcoming year. It's a little dangerous because you don't want to get ahead of the curve and get yourself caught with not enough revenue to pay for your expenses one year. But this year's budget right now, it has about 3% for appropriation of fund balance to get the budget balanced. And we think, again, that's the smartest way to make sure we're not taxing people for money we're not going to spend.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I'm done, go ahead.
Okay. And then we have, like I said, next is the expenditures. And at the last budget workshop, I had this up there and just gave you all kind of an overview of the budget process. It's actually it takes a year because we started this year doing quarterly capital meetings where we met with all the departments who are involved in the capital projects and met with them quarterly. We knew where they were with their projects. We knew how much funding they had, how much funding was left to use, were we gonna be on time, over, under payments. So we kept our thumb on the pulse of those projects all year long. That's something new we've done this year. And then we also incorporated, management met with departments and conducted mid-year budget meetings. And that was just a great open conversation where departments could talk to us about what they're gonna be asking for in their budget. And it was also a good time for us to be transparent as here's what the outlook looks for the budget. And it was just a really great engagement and communication tool with the employees to talk about the budget. And then also I talked about how management conducted a budget employee training, if you will, on the budget process. And next year, we'll open that back up to more individuals in the county. And then budget requests came in. So if you look at your budget book, I'm just gonna look at the general fund operations. You see the requested budget, and then you see all the notes in there. One thing I worked with staff a lot on this year was their notes. I noticed last year when I was involved in the budget process, without the notes, I had to do a lot of calling and, just to ask questions and help me determine what the recommended budget should be. So this time, departments did a great job putting in their notes for us. And what happens is they all had their due date to turn in their budgets. Those came to finance and then came to management. We read all the notes. All of them came across my desk specifically, read each one, and then I sent those to Kevin with recommendations, and then he reviewed all of them, edited what he saw fit. And while we're doing that, at the same time, finance was looking at the revenues, and then I'm simplifying this for you all. We came together, met weekly, decided the new personnel, decided the expenditures, and decided the revenues, and that's how management and finance came up with the balanced budget to present to you all and to provide to you all. So the current budget status is that management has provided council with a balanced budget that we believe provides the best value to the taxpayers. And then the next step for you all is the second reading of the budget. Here is the amended budget calendar, so you can see where we've been. And the budget kickoff for FY24 started in January. We're now at May 9th. Today, the council workshop. On Monday, you have the second reading of the budget. And then we'll have the council workshop on May 23rd, where I believe, Mr. Madden, we're gonna talk about recreation funding there. And then the budget public hearing on May 30th, and then June 5th will be the third reading of the FY24 budget. So I just wanna keep you guys abreast of where we are and what's to come in the budget process.
To let everybody else know, on May 23rd, that's going to be the day where a lot of people will be showing up to thank y'all for what y'all are giving them. A lot of the quasi-governments that receive money, as well as other entities that might be asking for more money. So that's the day y'all have people up at the podium talking about, I'd like more money.
I think that's it.
Okay.
I'll hand it over to you.
These are the funds right here that really drive the actual taxes that we're levying over here. General fund operations, no millage increase on that. Sheriff's office had the 2 mil increase, and that's driven by the personnel needs from the sheriff's office. Solicitor's office remained flat. Debt service millage is going down 3.9 mils, and that's as we're paying off a large chunk of our debt. During fiscal year 24, we will pay off the last of the debt, and then you'll see, I think it's Aaron, about 3.5 mils next year. Debt service millage will go down as well. The convenience centers, we have a plethora of convenience centers, and this year, and I hope this to be honestly the last year that we have to take this fund up, but we had a 0.6 of a mil increase in convenience centers to maintain the 16 that we have, 0.4 of a mil for the rural fire millage, and then other special revenue funds, and that's going to be your special tax districts, your fire districts, as well as Field Day Park and the Land Preservation District. No changes in those except for the Land Preservation District that is going down 1 mil. So to wrap all this up, this budget will have an overall county decrease in taxes. That'll be the third time in the last 4 years we've been able to do that. And that is really driven by the fact that the council back in 17, 18, the measures they took to get ahead of the curve with the capital maintenance, as well as to have money set aside to pay the debt off. So we're reaping the benefits of the sacrifices made then. These are, y'all saw these lists. The numbers might have changed a little bit, but this is where we're right now with our capital assets. Now, Fund 1420, that's our capital projects fund. This fund is where we've been shifting the general fund surplus that we've had every year to pay for our future capital needs. This again goes back to what we talked about, we promised the council and taxpayers we would do back in 2017. Top of the list is a new animal service building. Now I want to sort of explain, we got the $2 million, that's what we have budgeted in fiscal year 24. It's $2 million out of what's currently projected to be a $16 million project. That's a projection. We've hired the architect. The architect's going to come back, and I would recommend some type of workshop where you go over to the different designs as to what kind of actual building you want to build. You'll work with the architect on that. Management will make recommendations as what we recommend. Y'all have the final say-so as what animal shelter we build, and that will drive that $16 million to whatever it's going to be. New corner building, that is behind right now the pace of the animal shelter. We haven't hired an architect. The picture you've got up there, that's Lexington County's animal shelter. I'm sorry, not animal shelter, Corners building. Most of the Corners buildings throughout the state are in old retail centers or metal buildings like this, or I think Charleston's in an old church. You know, we're looking to step the game up right now with what we're doing in York County with the Corners building, but that is in the very early stages. We project that to be a $7 million expense. We've got $2 million budgeted next year, but again, we haven't even hired the architect yet for that, so we're not to that point as far along as the animal shelter is. The next one is the sheriff's office. That's the property that we purchased off of Heckle Boulevard. They've got to spend, and this is coming out of the sheriff's bucket, $810,000 to finish the remodeling and fixing that building up. The McKelvey roof, we've got $2 million out of projected $2.2 million to spend in next year's budget. Now, there's a chance some of these fundings might not be needed. There's some requesting with the state, but right now those budgets are very much up in the air. If those were to change and we get some additional funding that can supplement some of these, it'll just free up more money for other things, okay? Catawba Bend, that is Fund 1245. That's the fund for Catawba Bend. Everybody's aware of Catawba Bend. We are right now about $7.5 million away from being able to open the park up to the public. Fiscal year 24, we're going to spend about $2.5 million out of that fund. That fund is funded solely by HTAX. To finish the project, though, in fiscal year 25, we're going to need about $3 to $3.5 million from the general fund surplus from the capital projects fund. Now, I went back as we've debated Catawba Bend and the timing to get this open. I went back and I watched the council meeting back in 2017. I think there were 3 of y'all council at that point in time. Michael Johnson wrapped up the discussions by saying, now the hard part comes. It's what are we going to do with this property over here? There was never, because I wanted to make sure we hadn't make any promises that we wouldn't spend any general fund dollars out there. We didn't make any promises that we wouldn't do that. Council's direction has been to use HTAX for that park. Now, I think we need to get the park open. I'm going to really present 2 paths as to how we fund it. One is we pay for it out of the general fund surplus of the 1420. And then we pay that back with HTAX over the next couple of 2-3 years after that, okay? Sort of similar to what y'all did for Pennies 4. Pennies 4, if y'all remember, we loaned Pennies 4 $50 million from the general fund and paid Pennies 4 back so they could get a head start on their road projects. Similar concept to that. The other scenario is that y'all use the general fund surplus to finish the park up over there, and then once that park's open, you can use general fund surplus sort of as a second tier in the capital projects fund for other parks. I talked with Mr. Ryder today. He's got some property in a corporate area. He has no parks in his district. Maybe we would park out there. He mentioned 12 pickleball courts. No, he did not mention pickleball courts. But, you know, our parks, and this is something when we purchased that property, we talked a lot about that point in time, and I'm going to sort of rehash some stuff for new council members. We bought that property for 2 main reasons. Number 1, for quality of life for our citizens, okay? That's why we have parks, quality of life for our citizens. Number 2 is good economic development. That's one of the top factors that when you have corporate headquarters moving down here, they look for good outdoor recreation. You know, we are behind right now where Greenville County's at, but if you go to Greenville County and look what they have for passive outdoor recreation, it has a huge economic impact in that county. And that's sort of the goal and vision of where we as management want to get to and where council has traditionally been with these parks as well. So I think it's important that we get Catawba Bend opened. You know, we don't need to figure out right now how we're going to either pay that money back or set a precedent to use the general fund surplus going forward, but I just want to make sure y'all are aware of what we have in the budget right now. And when you're biting that off, you're biting off the whole apple at that point in time as well. So, go ahead, Mom.
As to when did we ever talk about a timeline and expenditure or expenses that we would dump into this to get it open? Because if we had a timeline, then you can kind of map it out with how we're gonna spend it. But I
Yeah.
don't recall ever having that full council discussion.
No, there's,
about-
and Bump, this is really the first time that management's coming before y'all with a specific timeline and schedules when we're gonna get that park open to the public. And the definition of open to the public, you know, varies greatly. I think Allison's got some parks where she has open to the public a handful of weekends throughout the year. This is more of the idea of having a nice road to go in, a gatehouse, nice parking lot, nice bathroom, and access to the trails we have out there. And at that point, you've got the park open. It might be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years before you do anything else out there. The demand by the citizens is what's going to drive the next step for that park. But this is the first time we're sort of laying out an actual timeline to get that park open. And, you know, this is, if you remember, it wasn't that long ago, Bump, we did not have a parks department at all.
No.
So we're moving our way along, and we're trying to make sure we keep council in the loop, and we're making recommendations. We're getting feedback back from y'all because we want to make sure where we're going, council's in line with and supports us on this.
Well, it was just shocking to see that this shows up with such a big $2.5 million, knowing that we're gonna spend $7 million, or projected $7 million to kind of get something going. And we as a council haven't had that full discussion, and to see it on here for the very first time, it was just, in the grand scheme of things, it was just puzzling to hear that the very first time we hear about something, we got a $7 million price tag on it, and things have already seemed to be moving, but this council hadn't really set this.
Well, you know, I want to own some of that responsibility. In last year's budget, we had some capital projects money spent in there to work on the trails. And we should have done a better job at that point of sort of highlighting where we're going with this. The $7.5 million, I'll be honest, that number didn't get finalized up until a few weeks ago. And this has been a sort of a moving target, figuring out what we want to do to have that park open and what's the appropriate level of having it open. Remember, we did 3 years ago, I think, we did a sort of master plan, sort of a vision of where the park might be. And it had about a $60 million price tag on it in total, okay? And there was supposed to be all this grant money to come to do this and that. Well, we're not pitching you that, and we're not shooting for that right now. That will be way down the road. We want to get the park open to the citizens so they can use it. And then, like I said, the demand from the citizens will drive, you know, when management comes to y'all and says, we want the next expansion of the park. You know, we get out there and we might see that thing's busting at the seams and we need to do something to get more access to the people out there. Or we might see that it's slow. We're going to let that sort of drive the next step in here, but I do think it's important that we sort of finish what we've started in this project and get it open to the public. I don't think we're doing anything that's not transparent with the taxpayers. Again, that's why I went back and watched that council meeting. You know, everybody looked at it as a great purchase except for one council member. It was interesting. Mr. Winkler's concern was we didn't have a complete plan later what we're going to do. And we made it clear we really don't know. But it was a, you know, valuable piece of property that we could get in a strategic area of the county. We could sort of control the destiny of that part of the county. And, you know, again, we talked about the quality of life for our taxpayers. And that really means access to go out there and walk the trails. And, you know, whether it be ride bikes or walk or whatever else you might do. You know, like I've got an RV, I like to go camping. But that's the main reason we got the property, that and the economic development benefit of that. So in order to reach that goal, the $7.5 million from where we're at right now is the price tag to get there. Management believes it's reasonable and doable. We have a financial path to get there. And, you know, we'll talk, I think, in next year's budget, do we want to have the H-Tax pay back the general fund surplus that's in Fund 1420, or do we want to sort of set a precedent after we build our main buildings we operate out of, like the coroner's building or the animal shelter? Do we want to have another tier till we spend money on the parks? Because we do have a growing demand for passive recreation throughout the county right now.
Well, as you noted, there's not a county park in District 4, so I'm going on the record that we will start the discussion as to look for some property in District 4. Since we have a Parks Department, I think it'll be short-sighted not to start looking as to what kind of parks and rec we can put inside of District 4. And it's not territorial, but it should just be a little more equitable.
No, you're exactly, there's not a county park on the south side of Rock Hill, and this is south of Rock Hill, but it's not necessarily the south side of Rock Hill as well. I don't disagree with that, and I think that's something we should pursue.
Well, Kevin,
Yes, sir.
it doesn't like much to be able to do that, does it? As far as just the trails and all, how much does it like?
You're talking about the trails at Catawba Bend? Mm-hmm. The trails are close right now, and this is sort of getting people out there to be able to use those trails. And again, yeah, $7.5 million, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that's pocket change or that's a small amount of money. But when you look at the investment we have out there and the benefit to the taxpayers, I think the $7.5 million is very reasonable to get that park open to the public and have access to the public. Okay. This is my last slide. I'm gonna talk about, then I'm gonna turn Mr. Hudspeth and we'll transition over here. This is the same list we showed you all back in February when we had the council retreat, okay? The last item we discussed and talked about that time was the county roads, okay? And let me take a step back for new council members. This fund here, I mentioned earlier the steps that county council took where we took some steps to make sure we had the funds available to pay our debt off and eliminate the debt service millage. We also took some steps to make sure we can maintain our capital assets. I think, Christie, you and Bump were the only ones on council. Michael Johnson had a meltdown about a boiler or cooler that blew up unexpectedly, and we weren't really doing a good job of our capital maintenance. We've taken tremendous strides in that, and we have a mechanism in place to make sure we have the funding available to take care of that on a pay-as-you-go basis. These projects that you see on here are things that need to be done. Had it not been for this fund being established, we'd be out there having to go borrow money every year like most governments do to pay for these things. And the cost of borrowing money right now is very, very expensive. Council was very wise back at that time period to do what they did to make sure we can pay for these things as you go. And we're trying to stay ahead of the curve, which costs our taxpayers, or I'm sorry, saves our taxpayers money. So this is the list for the upcoming year. There is quite a bit on here. The biggest one being Ebenezer, and that's sort of good Ebenezer, the facelift that it needs. And then the county roads, and this is something, you know, y'all have spent money in the past to buy some equipment, to have county staff do repaving of roads. And this is a process that we want to get in place every year. We've got some money designated for county roads. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hudspeth, and he can talk about the roads and how that came to be.
Yeah, I'll just talk from here if that's okay. If you remember, the last time we had a workshop, we talked about the condition of our road, and I think we gave you about $3.5 million worth of projects that we could select from. However, there's pages and pages of roads that need to be resurfaced, that need attention, and making a distinction between what's the absolute worst, what's the 10th worst, what's the 20th worst, it's really a subjective kind of thing, and I don't think it's important to make that distinction, because if you take say the top 30 or 40 or 50 roads, they all need to be resurfaced. So what we've done, and what I asked engineering to do, and this is based on the conversations we had with council, without regard to district, without regard to any other factors, the only thing that we would consider is the condition of the road and how many people that road serves, how much traffic's on it. So with those factors, and I'll let Patrick speak to that a little in more detail, we asked them to give us your top 10 or so roads that you would like to resurface, that you think are the most deserving to be on that list. We've come up with $1.5 million worth of roads that matches the budget that Kevin had set aside. And these are the roads that engineering is recommending that council select for this year's critical needs funding. So I'm happy to answer any questions council may have, or Patrick, do you have anything to add to that?
All right, well, that will be the list of roads, and then they go out to bid. I think that'll be coming up here soon, Patrick?
If that list is approved, we'll get going on the bid package.
Okay, well, I think you need to get work on the bid package. That's gonna be it for this budget update. If anybody's held any questions until the end, fire away now. I know you have gotten those lovely budget books to go through and a lot of information to digest. Yes, sir.
Seeing that we're going to spend another $5.5 million on Ebenezer Park, didn't, that last improvement was what, about $11 million?
No,
Was it-
no.
Or was it five?
That
11 or
last
five?
improvement, I think, was about $3.5 or $4 million, I believe. That's where we built the little semicircle out there with the piers and did some improvements to the beach over there. And that was, I'm gonna say, an expansion of the Ebenezer, the amenities they had out there. This is going in and basically uplifting the entire infrastructure. We're gonna be replacing the water lines that are going out there. Those will need replaced. We're gonna be replacing the roads and the campsites. This is, and the bathrooms, a complete uplift to bring Ebenezer to the standards that I think York County citizens deserve and maintain. And, you know, I'll say this, the city of Rock Hill, when you go look at their parks, their facilities, you can go look at the one they have downtown, they do it first class, and that's how we're gonna have our parks as well. And this $5.5 million is gonna bring Ebenezer up to just as nice as any park out there. So, you know, I'm looking forward to having this done. I've camped at Ebenezer, and I think it's a shame with the location we have that the facilities just aren't where they need to be. So this is getting them to where I think they need to be, and it's going to be a beautiful park when this is done and complete, and again, what I think our citizens deserve.
I just want to go on the record to say that's the first time I've heard you compliment the city of Rock Hill. Good for you.
It's
Kevin.
not the first, I can promise you, it's not the first. Thank you for that, though, yeah.
I have one, just generalized, and I didn't bring the book with me today, but I think I understood you to say that there's a 3.9 mil decrease overall, given the debt service that's coming off. Is that right?
No, ma'am, let's go through, I'll go through all the millages.
Well, it was 3.9 mil for the debt service, and then 2 mil increase for the sheriff, and then a 1 mil to the unincorporated
Yes, ma'am.
areas, which was split out 0.4 to the rural fire board and 0.6 for the convenience center. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So the net impact to the community is the unincorporated citizens will see about a mil decrease in the budget, close to a mil decrease, and those in the incorporated areas are gonna see about close to a 3 mil, is that correct?
No, ma'am. You're gonna have 2 plus 1, 3 mils going up on one end over here, and then 3.9 going down. That's in the unincorporated area, so 9/10 of a millage decrease in the incorporated area, 1.9 in the municipalities.
1.9,
I'm sorry, I'm being precise, overly precise, I'm sorry.
sounds good.
And that's not including the 1 mil decrease?
Correct.
that
In Ms. Love's district, they're gonna see an additional 1 mil fall off as well. And that's something, you know, I'll toot our horn here. Most governments, there's a thing about millage. When you get it up, you never wanna take it down. Sort of like you fought to get your taxes up, and governments like to cling and hang to that. I'm not afraid at all, and nor has our council been, to lower taxes when we can, and when it's necessary and needed to raise taxes, we'll do the same thing. Our goal, and it was mentioned on one of the first slides over here, and this is what we try to do every time, we want to provide the best value we can to our taxpayers, period, at the most efficient way we can. Yes, sir.
For our meeting on Monday, can you go back and pull, let's say, the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years and show what York County's done the last 10 years without millage? Increase, decrease, where we were at in
Yeah.
2013, where we're at in 2023.
We can do that.
To kind of let people at home or people who come to our meetings see how we've operated and try to be good stewards of what we take in and how we balance and how we conduct business financially.
Yes,
I think
sir.
that'll be important.
We can put
to
that
show.
together for you. We'll do that. Good deal. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Does that conclude the budget, everything related to the budget? Okay. We're going to move now to the discussion on the internal and external communications piece. This is something that emanated from our discussion at the retreat and was the last of the workshops that we decided to reserve some time and to discuss that issue. David, I think, do you want to lead us off with anything from management? We're in communications now. Did you want to start with some information from management before council starts discussing the communications piece?
Yeah, if I could, I'd like to recognize Greg Suskin, our PIO, Public Information Officer. he did want to present a slideshow and some video to just kind of apprise council on where we are with our program. So if we can allow him to do that and then have discussion afterwards.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Sussman?
Great, thanks. First, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak to y'all. Secondly, I do want to say I'm extremely nervous, so bear with me as I try to get through this as best as I can. And apparently, I also overdressed, so I apologize for that definitely as well.
You look very nice.
I do want to just start by saying I wanted to kind of give a little bit of just background as to why I kind of established our PIO office the way I did here. And it's kind of maybe a little bit different than you might expect, but for me, just to get a little bit personal for a second, I have always liked to write. That's always been my thing. I've always loved to tell stories through writing. From the time I was 11 years old, I've kept a diary. I still keep it. And I still have every single one of those journals that I had from back when I was 11. And when I was a kid, we'd go visit my grandmother in Mississippi. She lives in the Mississippi Delta, where there's absolutely nothing to do, zero. I would sit in a room in there where she had a typewriter. I'd put a piece of paper in there, and I'd just start banging out stories that I wanted to write from the time I was very young. Poetry, short stories, long stories, it didn't matter. And it was just great to just imagine all these things that I was writing and doing. And then the TV part kind of came in. When I got into high school and early into the college years, my mom got one of those video cameras that you probably remember, one of the video cameras back then where you put the entire VHS tape inside the camera. Yeah, she got one of those. My mom never touched it, but we did. My friends and I would go out. I got to grow up near the beach in Fort Lauderdale, and we'd go out on the beach and just walk up to people and interview them. Complete strangers, just go up and just start talking to people. And we'd try to take the camera into stores and interview people in stores until we got kicked out by security. And of course, we'd go back, take that tape, pop it in the VCR, and just laugh. And so somewhere along the line, I realized I really, really love to write, and it sure is fun to do something with this camera. It was like thunder and lightning. It was like TV reporter. So it fit me like a glove. And of course, I did that for 30 years until the county came calling about a year and a half ago. And I will never forget the conversation that I had with Kevin Madden on the phone, because in that conversation, he said, "We want you to tell the county's story." And that pitch just resonated with me, because that's exactly what I love to do. If he would have said it any other way, who knows what I would have thought. But he said, "We want you to tell the county's story." And I thought, wow, maybe I could do a job where I'm not talking about murder and child sex offenders and kids getting killed in car accidents and all that kind of stuff. Wouldn't that be nice to be able to use the skills that I have to tell different types of stories and maybe even some positive things? So hired this gentleman right there, Josh Stender, who had 15 years of experience in news as a photographer, who also loves to tell stories, but on the visual side. And both of us think very much the same way, the way we work together. What he shoots and edits, which he does a fantastic job with, complements the words that I write. And we work together really well as a team. We're both very much visual thinkers. So I say that just to say that we kind of had this idea to sort of create a mini newsroom here at the county. And fortunately, we were able to get all the gear that we needed and start working. And about 18 months ago, when Josh got here, to really start putting some things together and figure out kind of how we wanted to do this PIO thing, which neither of us had ever done, in a very different way. So I guess I just first wanted to show you a little video. I could have made this video an hour, because it's a compilation of some of the things we've done over the last year and a half. It's 2 minutes, so I'm not going to make you sit there an hour. But I wanted to show that just to give some examples of some kind of clips of some of the things we've done over the last year and a half. So.
Kind of funny that you could find somewhere like this. It's really nice to run a cross-country race not far from where you live.
You're going to want to pay attention to this, because York County is about to install a 7-mile-long sewer pipe about this size.
We just want people to be aware of what's going on and why we're doing what we're doing. Gotta take care of these plants.
A small seed that can grow a plant, a small seed can also change a young man or woman's life.
It helps the people whose hearts are in this.
I think it speaks volumes to what our council is trying to do.
I ain't never tried to be nothing different.
I'm just thrilled to be their representative.
Every department now has a Lucas device that makes doing CPR hands-free.
Have an ambulance on the way. Are you able to unlock the door when they get there?
We are going to give her or present her with a plaque. Basically, it says that she's a hero.
Amy Craig still gets emotional 9 years after her son Grayson was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer.
You don't want to ride with us?
Pat Morrison has been cruising the grounds at Ebenezer Park for 28 years.
People say someone do something. I want to be that someone.
I probably spend more time with the dog than I do my own family some days.
And if you're someone who loves to take the back roads, in just 2 days, you're going to have a great new cut through to take.
How many people are turning left at this intersection? How many people are turning right? And that helps us determine what kind of turn lanes we need.
Because York County was in the middle of something called Recode, which he was told might save his family project. Every truck or car pulls up to the scales and their load is checked. If it's not properly secured, you'll pay a $25 fee or $50 if you're a commercial driver. Boyd says fire is not a bad thing in the woods. In fact, it's critical to the health of a forest.
You allow more sunlight to reach the forest floor, which you're going to get a flush of vegetation to come back.
So it's kind of hard for me to pare that down because I think we've done, Josh was telling me today, somewhere around 70-something videos of different lengths since we've been here. So, but I want to start just so I can go ahead with the first slide, the PowerPoint presentation. There we go, thanks. Wanted to start on social media because that's kind of what we live by. The second day that I got here, in September 21, I remember getting a scrap piece of paper and writing down the number of followers we had on all those social media platforms. The numbers on the right there are current as of last night when I finished this presentation up. You can see what we've added, especially on Facebook. We've got thousands of more followers. There's been hundreds added on the other platforms. A little bit different on the bottom there with YouTube. That, of course, is, you're talking about YouTube with subscribers, people that actually sign up to receive notifications for videos, and that is the same YouTube channel folks can watch council meetings and things like that on. We don't really promote YouTube, but we put all our videos there. But we really focus on, particularly on Facebook and on Instagram for a lot of what we do. Also, about somewhere around 6 months ago, I kind of formalized a relationship with CN2. They're always looking for content, and I said, look, if you've got something here that you like, that you think could be on their newscast, that's in the public interest for your viewers, would you run it? They said, sure. So a lot of our stuff we send directly to them, and it ends up running on their newscast as well. Just want to go over a little bit, and I won't go into too much detail on these, but these are the things basically that we focus on as far as how we use social media. I put video up there because I kind of look at that the way a realtor says location, location, location. If you don't have video nowadays on social media, you are dead in the water. That is what everybody expects to see, especially in the age of Instagram and even TikTok. Video is what makes people stop and look at what you're doing. They want to hear, they want to see, they want sound. So we really try to focus on that. Not all of our posts, of course, have video, but that's an important thing. We also look at just the impact. Who is this story going to impact? Is there an impact at all? And that sort of thing. We also try to focus on giving people factual information. We tried early on to do some crazy stuff that we thought was very clever, would go viral, that everybody would love and think was hilarious. And we learned very quickly that people do not come to government social media pages for cute. We can use humor to try to sell stories and that sort of thing, but people want direct information that impacts their lives, that's in the public interest. And the most popular posts and videos we do are things that have a direct impact on people, whether it's traffic, whether it's a story we do on saving money on your taxes, whatever it may be. Those kinds of issues always seem to do very, very well. And lastly would be community alerts, and that's just everything from, from Chuck Haynes and his folks telling me there's a tornado watch and there could be some flooding issues, to Eric Reckett calling me up from Public Works and saying there's a water main break in Fort Mill. Can you please post something on this? Those types of issues that are alerts for the community as well. I just put this up here because another thing I've kind of enjoyed doing, of course, I mentioned writing, is I've been able to get involved a little bit more with the South Carolina Association of Counties. I've written an article, contributed to some other articles for their magazine, and had the privilege back in February of going to Columbia and being one of the speakers at an Institute for Government class on using social media, and the audience was people like you. It was all elected county leaders from around the state who I was talking to about external communications and using social media. So I'm glad to be, was glad to be part of that. Also, would definitely be remiss if I didn't mention a lot of in-house projects. There's a lot of things we do that you all will never see. We've done a lot of projects over the last year and a half that are things that our departments have wanted, videos, training videos. You see one up there that says new radio user guide. When all the first responders in the county got new radios, apparently there was quite a learning curve on using them. So Josh made, I think, 8 training videos specifically to how to use those radios for all the departments. And typically, if there's nothing I have to write and I'm not lending my voice to it, it's all him. He's putting all those together. One of the bigger ones was, I guess I did not realize until recently, last year, that every teacher in the county is required to watch a video on the Catawba Nuclear Station. Evacuation routes, what can happen, just educating themselves about it. They show that in all the schools. And I guess they were using a video that was a decade old, and Chuck Haynes said, hey, I want to redo this. So Josh spent weeks working on a 15-minute long video with all new interviews and new video to show teachers in schools about the Catawba Nuclear Station and things like that, to alert them to that. And so he put that together. We did a video for class and comp, and there's some other things we're still working on, including a video for the clerk of court on jury instructions. We've done a couple things with GIS about some new maps that they're putting together. It's just some ideas of kind of the in-reach that we've done, that things that don't ever make it to social media. I'll talk a little about local media. I have kind of a philosophy about news releases that I only put them out when it's something that's very significant. I guess because in my time as a reporter, I had to cover 4 counties, York, Chester, Lancaster, and Chesterfield by myself. And you can imagine I got news releases from every particular agency that had meetings. Every school board, every county council, every city council, town council, airport commission, whoever they were. I got all their agendas. I got their special called meetings. I got their initiatives that they were doing, events, and most of them I would just go delete, 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 because I knew we were never going to cover half of that stuff. So I decided that I was going to put out a release to the point where people would go, this came from Suskin. We probably want to look at this, and this is something we may want to report on. And it wouldn't just get lost in all the noise of the thousands of releases these news desks get from everybody else. So I think this year, we're in May, I've probably only sent out maybe four full news releases, one a month so far, on certain specific things. Aside from that, I mean, I'm talking to reporters, as you would imagine, probably three days out of the week. Usually it's by text, sometimes by email, a few times they call. But so I'm communicating there. One thing we've tried to do is to tell the story first. We found this to be a really effective way to get media stories. Is some of those things you see up there, the access buses, that's what Tom Audette kind of got going up there in Fort Mill when they got the access buses for seniors. The Galleria Boulevard extension, which was part of that video, when they first started building the trails at Catawba Bend, I didn't put out releases on those things. We went out there and did that story, got the whole thing together, and then I'd have media calling me the days following going, that was a really good story, we'd like to do that. Who can we talk to about that story? Because they've seen it, they've seen what it's all about, and then they wanted to jump on board and do it, and we found that to be an effective way as well. Plus, we get to be first, which in my nature as a reporter, it's still very important to me to be first. I got to get out of that mindset, but it'll always be there, I think. And I still do meet with reporters from time to time as well when I can. This is my last slide, and I'll be done. But future goals, and that 20,000 followers, that's specifically related to Facebook. We're at about just under 16,000 followers on Facebook. The City of Rock Hills Facebook is about 18. We've grown a lot. I think we're continuing to grow just with the content that we're putting on there. And I mentioned Facebook really because that's still the primary platform. Facebook gets a bad rap for a lot of things, But as far as growth and the number of users and what they allow you to do on Facebook, there's much more freedom there than some of the other platforms. So we focused a lot on that. Continue to work with South Carolina Association of Counties and get more involved with just kind of spreading the news of what we're doing here in York County around the state. This last part I want to ask you about just a little bit, because there are some things that I've wanted to do with council specifically since I got here, and I've sort of had varying levels of success, I guess. One of the first things I wanted to do when I got here, once Josh was hired, was to redo the bios for everybody on the website. Your bio, as you know, now has your photo and some text, which is fine. It's fine. But I had an idea that wouldn't it be great if everybody had a 20-second video there on their website, just to say, my name is so-and-so, this is my district, here's how I want to serve the people of York County. They can hear you, they can see you, and I thought that would really be a great idea. Sent out a couple emails, didn't get any takers on that. So after a while doing that, of thinking about that, I kind of put that aside and looked for other opportunities. But just so you know, I checked the Google Analytics yesterday on the council page, and already in the month of May, there's been 570 visits to that site, to that page, specific page on our website, which for 8 days sounds like a lot to me. So people are coming to that particular page. And so I thought I would maybe just revisit and extend that offer again to add more to your bios on there. The kind of the big thing I wanted to do was to get more into doing some interviews on issues that y'all are dealing with. And I had always thought of it as doing interviews post-council meetings about major votes. It could be something that's unanimous, that everybody loves and signs off on. It's a big thing for the county to be able to go and get an interview with someone, most likely the person whose district that's in, unless it involves countywide, get someone to speak and say, hey, here's why we supported this. But I also thought, and if this doesn't go over well, you'll never hear me mention it again, I swear. But I also thought of trying to get y'all to speak out about the tough issues too, the ones where the council's split 4-3, the ones that are tough and require, the ones that get people lined up in this room to talk about, and have one person to maybe speak for the majority and one person to speak for the minority and say, this is why I voted the way I did, this is why I'm passionate about this particular issue, whether it went your way or not. And that would help with transparency. It would have you guys out there sort of explaining votes and that sort of, and be able to speak out in that way. And that's something that I've wanted to do since I got here. But anyway, so that's part of what I wanted to discuss with you guys about just any opportunities like that for the future. And one area I did have success was when we started doing stories about the discretionary funds that you were able to get and spend. Robert Winkler approached me first, gave me an idea of something he was doing with his discretionary funds. We went and did the story, and it came out great. It was wonderful. Since then, I think we did 2 with Bump last year. I know it's been a while, but we did 2 with you. We've done 2 stories with Allison on her discretionary funds, and we did one with Brandon before he left as well. But that's just an opportunity, I think, for y'all to say, hey, these are some charities and some organizations in York County that we're excited about, passionate about, want to see succeed, and will allow you in a positive way to show what you're doing to support those agencies. So I just say, anytime you want to talk about something like that and maybe putting a story together, a video together, we're here. We'd love to do those kind of stories, because generally they're very visual and can be pretty emotional too, with the folks receiving the funds and how grateful they are for the support of council. So a very last point is just want to also continue to promote York County departments. I'm frequently talking to department heads and saying, hey, anything going on, any message that you have that you want to get out there to the public in your department, whatever it may be, it's a variety of things, to get our county staff out there and kind of be their voice and help get their message out internally. Many times it's engineering on a project or things like that, but it can be whatever. It can run the gamut. So we want to do all those kind of things and try to be the best county voice that we can. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Greg. You didn't seem nervous at all. You did a good job.
Well, I got rolling. So.
Well, I think
have any questions?
I think I speak for the council when I say we're glad to have you here. I know that York County, and one of the reasons why this is an important area for us is that, and I know Bump has said this repeatedly, the county is doing a ton of things, and we're doing it and cutting taxes while we're doing it and trying to be very conscientious about things, but a lot of times we don't tell our story, and so that's how I view that, is how do we tell the county story, and I love the fact that you kind of have been in trial and error. What works, what doesn't work? How do we figure out how to do things, and how do we get the message out there? So I appreciate that candor that you come with, and I do think that our county has so many blessings and so many good things to talk about, and appreciate you being here. So part of our discussion, and what I hate about this atmosphere instead of heckle, is it's a little bit more like a sitting at a podium and a bench instead of having a conversation. And I much prefer just having conversations when it comes to something like this. And I'll blame Kevin for us being over here in York because he hates traveling over to Heckle.
Let's all go put our chairs in a seat.
Can we do that? Can we drag our mics? So I'm just kidding. I don't think we can with the mic situation. I'm going to open it up to council now. And I don't know that we need to, I don't know that you need to stand up there, Greg. I think it's more of a, but does anybody have any questions, I guess, to start out with? But I think the purpose of the communications piece of this was for council to be able to say, what are the things that we can do? What are some things that we'd like to see improved? And I'll just start out and say, to me, there's two different bigger issues. One is the external messaging that we do and how we communicate and make sure that we get the message out to the people. And then there's the internal communication. What are things that we can do internally to improve communications amongst the council, between management and council? And so, you know, I kind of view it as a two-part. Are there things that we can do to improve that? I'm happy to start out and talk about, and I'll just reiterate from our retreat, some of the things that we talked about there, which is why we're having this meeting now, is utilizing PIO, discussing that, internal communications with department heads, council members receiving complete packets of information from Planning Commission. Those were the topics that kind of raised this discussion point. And so as I think I'm just going to open this up for council. I'm going to have discussions. And
well, when I saw communications on here, I thought it was more communication between management and council, departments and council, not particularly what between us and the PIO, but since that has come up in the past about what is our PIO putting out, how's he doing it? I think when Greg took this job, it was like a blank canvas. You know, we'd never had one before. So whatever the canvas looked like, whatever you wanted it to be, shape it, like I say, trial and error, what works, what gravitates people to the different social medias. I think trial and error is, like I say, the best research. I do think if we tried to do press releases and just shoving information out on what we're deciding, what we're doing, like you say, if it's just flooding it, I don't think people will really respect it when we do release it. So kind of like you said, pick and choose what you make to be the highlight from what you're reporting on or what you're saying that we're doing. While you were speaking, I wrote down a little quote that somebody told me a long time ago. It says, if everything's important, nothing's really important. You know, everything can't be at that high level that gets that attention that warrants the big story, because like I say, people start to say, well, there goes Greg again, there goes council again, you know, so picking and choosing how we kind of position. But I've said for years and years, we do tons of good things from this council, this county. And it seems like it feels like publicly it goes unnoticed because people always talk about what's going on over here, over there, with this municipality, with this one. We don't really get that buzz about what we're doing on the same scale. And I think we're doing it on a much bigger scale than some people are doing it. But it just doesn't feel like it coming from the public that people really, it doesn't sink in that, hey, that was a big deal. Whatever that big deal was, it should be a big deal. And it's just hard to force feed people what we're doing, just like rolling back the millage when we've done it over the years. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. It means a lot to people's pocketbooks. When we give out raises to our employees, when we get benefits to our employees, those are big deals, and nobody really knows what we're kind of doing except the people that really gravitate to it. But on a grand scale, I think we knock it out the park. But it's like having the best thing in the world and nobody really knows about it. So, I mean, I think you're doing an impeccable job of trying to get these stories out. It's just getting them in the right pipeline for people to really watch it, see it, and feel it. We don't get a lot of news coverage from council. I mean, from news stations. Very rarely do we see TV stations come in and put us out in this region, unless it's the Panther story or TIFFs or, you know, those big news, Channel 9 newsworthy stories. But we do a lot of great things in this chamber, and it's sad to say that a lot of people don't know the hard work that staff puts in, council puts in, and even some of our volunteer groups, our boards and commissions, you know, they're knocking it out the park. So I'd say just keep grinding it out, doing these stories, and eventually people are, they'll come around and we'll be recognized for the work that we're doing, staff's doing, your staff is doing. So I think it's still a blank canvas because there's still so much more that you can do. Trial and error is kind of the way to go. You know, it'd be different if we had a PIO prior to Greg to say, hey, he did this and you're doing this. Well,
in fairness to Bob, it wasn't a department. She didn't have staff helping her. You didn't have the media and
We did not have
kinda throwing
video
out
capabilities and things like that. I think that's what Bob's
yes, that's
referring to.
We love you, Trish. We all love you, Trish. But keep doing what we're doing.
I'll go next.
All right.
Think you ought to get him to help with the actual county website to make it more user-friendly and people can understand it and all. Because I even know whenever I was running, the number of people that called and even us going through trying to find stuff and whatnot, it isn't the best layout. And also, I would like, as far as each district, because I did get Jonathan and them, they are sending me notifications on zonings and stuff coming up. But I don't know why it couldn't be in each of our districts, no matter what it is, we could receive notification ahead of time before we get a packet 3 days before and we don't really understand it.
Well, I mean, you raised the issue of the website. I personally agree with that. I think the website is a little bit difficult to navigate. I know that folks have a difficult time there. I think it's important for council to speak up and raise the issues one by one. I think it would be nice to figure out how to simplify that, to make it a little bit more user-friendly. I know that with the GIS too, there have been some changes on that that are a little bit more difficult to navigate now with the change in platform, but
I was just gonna say this about the website, and Trish may want to correct me if I'm wrong here, but because Josh and I do that now as far as managing the content on the website. When someone sends something to us, we review it before it goes on. And so we're responsible for the content there, but from my understanding is the layout is a Civic Plus issue. And I thought they talked at some point about revamping the website because it's been several years, but that's something we can't control, the look, the layout. We can only control the content. Is that correct? My understanding is the content, it's all formatted a certain way, but it's not like we can radically change the way the website looks. That'd have to be a Civic Plus.
Correct. I haven't reviewed the contract in a while, but I believe every 3 years, you'll have to check for the contract, there's a new layout change. So that then you can change the entire layout to the templates or whatnot, which you would want on the website. But you would have to read the contract. Like I said, I've not looked at that contract in about 2 years now.
some of the things I've noticed on the website in particular is like outdated things that are on the pages. I don't know who reviews it. Like there's content on, like for instance, the Panthers documents that were posted. I think that's still on there. There's several of those things. So I don't know who's managing that, but I think that those are some things who would we send that to you?
Yeah,
Like if
send
we
that to
notice
me,
that, just
and
shoot you an email and say, hey,
Some
we
of
noticed
those
this.
things I've asked about removing and been told, not at this time. Like there's still a lot of COVID information on there and links to COVID sites that I wanted to take down, and was told at this time that I shouldn't take those down. So I'll ask those questions every once in a while, but yeah, I'm sure there are things that are on there that are probably dated.
So all questions about the website, we can direct to you? Okay.
And I can direct them to the person who can give me a response as to whether they still want that on the website or not, depending on what it is, so.
Okay. Can, just
Ms. Cloninger?
two
Yeah.
quick things. Okay, so Greg, what would be a way that you could get more following? We do have 15,000 followers, but only really 56 following the Facebook page. Is there, I know that there are people out there that are pros. I mean, not that you're not a pro on Facebook, getting like, there's just different techniques that they use to get it, get the information out in different areas on Facebook.
I think I see what you're saying, but the followers is the number of people that are following our York County government Facebook page.
Right.
Following is the number of people we're following.
Okay,
And
following.
I've
Okay.
actually never followed anyone. That was a number from when I got here,
Okay.
but that's just like your normal personal Facebook page. If you're following someone,
All right.
then that's showing that your county government is following 56 other pages. And that's probably gonna be a lot of our pages, such as the parks pages and animal control and things like that, and maybe some city economic development pages, things like that, but that's who we're following.
Okay, and then, just because it's my area, I don't see anything on here about the Strawberry Festival. Shame on you, but that's my two things. Go ahead.
I can appreciate that. And sometimes, and this is probably something that I probably need to ask about, because sometimes when it comes to festivals and things that municipalities are doing, it's a little bit different for me as far as promoting those things. I think, well, you've got Visit York County that's going to do that. You've got the Chamber of Commerce that's going to do that. You've got the town of Fort Mill that's going to do that. Is that really something that I should be sharing as well? And if that's the consensus, fine, I'll do that.
I think so.
Because I
But
know
that's
when
just
York,
my thing.
York here in town has Summerfest, Rock Hill has
Yeah.
Come See Me.
Yeah.
I wasn't really sharing those posts either that involve festivals for our local cities. So I can certainly change that.
I'm gonna throw this out as an idea simply because I raised this issue previously and asked some questions about it. County actually has a platform called Notify Me. And when it first came out, to me, it's critical because folks can go there and that's one place that you can tell the community, say, go sign up for this. And if you want to get an email, you can get an email from county on different topics. If there's a rezoning in your area, you can pick this button. If there's, I forget all the categories, there were a lot of them. One of them, and I know that some of the other municipalities do this, is they send out like a monthly newsletter. And so I think to Debbie's point, having the relationships with the PIOs in the municipalities where you say, hey, do you have something coming up next month that you want for us to put in here? And maybe be thinking about for the next month. These are things so that folks who sign up for it could actually get something monthly that just says, this is what's on the horizon. And the reason I bring that up too is I had a meeting last night and I'm just throwing out these ideas and trying to figure out, is there a way for us to capitalize on our existing platforms? I had a meeting last night with the community and the residents, and of course you're always gonna get some folks who say, well, I didn't know, when did the comp plan get passed? I don't know anything about that. How come I didn't get any notice of that if that's gonna affect me? And Jonathan was there, and we know that the notices go out to where they're required to, like the Herald, or they go out to, I don't know how else we're required to post that on a page, but if some folks signed up for instance, with the comp plan, when we were doing that, having that as part of a newsletter to say, hey, comp plan is here in your town. We got Pennies for Progress that has a schedule. We have a budget that has a schedule. I think it's just, I throw that out there because if you're thinking about that monthly, then maybe there's an opportunity there to let folks decide, do they want to be notified or not? And I think it's just it's a possibility. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, so you brought up external communication, internal communication. So I guess first I'll touch on external. I'm curious, how many of you have a newsletter? I know Tom does. Does anybody else have a newsletter? You send that out, I guess, monthly, or how often you send it out, Allison?
I send things out, I do a newsletter a couple times a month.
Okay. As a new council member, I'm trying to juggle all these responsibilities, including running businesses that I own, and it is a bit of a challenge. I'd like to see the county help us with a newsletter. So give us some of the basics needed in a newsletter, and I wrote down, you kind of said this a second ago, Tommy, but anything going on with planning and zoning, that is something that everybody in York County, or specifically your district, might want to know. Economic development, what's going on with economic development. So these are standard pieces in a newsletter. You can add to it, because I'm sure, Allison, there's plenty of stuff that you're doing that don't apply to what we're doing, and same thing in the rest of our districts. But planning and zoning, economic development, parks, and roads, obviously, / pennies. So this information's provided to us, and then we can add to it in our newsletter, keeping it as brief or as broad as you'd like for it to be. I'd also like to see the county budget to pay for, I guess, Constant Contact or whatever it is that some of you are using. I think I saw that Tom is using Constant Contact. Michael Johnson uses Constant Contact, because I'm beginning to research this. But for me, like many of you, I'm guessing time's not on your side. So if something were put together for you and you could add to it, it would be very helpful. So we're not going to solve this issue tonight, and some of you may not even feel like this is one that's important. But if it is, this may be something that we can begin to work on and piece together and come up with a solution that applies to all council members.
I think he's done.
So, marketing's my favorite thing. You know, can't cook, sing, dance, but marketing is something that I consider myself good at. And I think you got a hard job. And the reason you have a hard job is because government's not popular. And you can't take something that people don't really like and make it popular. So I think that, Public Information Officer, PIO, I've written down several different things that could stand for. And they're different categories of things that I feel like the people will tune into. You do have some things that are popular. Ebenezer Park is popular. Allison Creek is going to be popular. Catawba Bend is going to be popular. We got a naked goat market that's blowing the roof off over in Lake Wiley. And then you've got informative. Some people want to get involved because they want to know what is going on, not where they can go and have a food truck and some live music, but they want to know what is going on in York County. And then you've got operations, which to me that is that's your department heads and what different departments are doing. And so I've been doing some neighborhood meetings, not town halls, mind you, but neighborhood meetings. And the questions that I'm asked at every one of those is, what's the organization? I mean, so many people in my district are new here. And I think that when you talk about telling the county story, you got to start from the ground up. Because the people that have lived here their whole lives, they know the county story. They'd like to be kept up to date, but they know the county story. But then you've got so many new people that have moved into the Fort Mill area and to my area and even Rock Hill, of course, and they don't know the story at all, and maybe they don't even want to know the story. I remember, when I first started coming to council member meetings, it wasn't because I was like, oh, I need to go see what's going on in York County, and I would drive by something and say, oh my gosh, what in the world? Why are they taking down those trees? Or I'd see a roadblock and think, what's going on? And the Lake Wiley traffic page goes crazy when there's, I hear a fire truck go by in the morning, and then I look at the Lake Wiley traffic page, and everybody's wondering, oh my gosh, did anybody see where the fire truck was going? How long is it going to take me to get to Charlotte at 7:30 in the morning? So when you look at how many pages have cropped up over time of the neighborhood page, traffic page, all these pages, it's because people want to know what's going on. And the hard thing is finding a page where there's actually accurate information. So I think there's a niche for York County and our PIO that we haven't even really gotten there yet. We haven't really gotten there yet. And I do think that the Notify Me is extremely important. But when I go and I'm talking to a neighborhood and the people have been here for a year or two, and they say, so, I mean, they don't even know we're not a town. They don't know how many people are in York County. They don't know the organizational chart for York County. And I think that's very important. And so I think the website needs to incorporate a lot of that. But you have to remember, as your baseline, is that people, they don't want to have to get involved. They want to elect the best person they can find and have that person do the job and not have to get involved on a daily basis. So I just think there's a lot for us to keep in mind. We have to find the common denominators for our residents and know who that audience is. Who are the people that are tuning in? You know, you've got some people that are always negative, and that's not the audience you're going to play to. But then you've got different groups of people. You've got people that do want to know where can they go and what can they do on the weekend? How much is it going to cost them to get into Ebenezer? Are we going to charge at Allison Creek? You've got those people, and then you've got the people who, again, just want to know, you know, is the convenience center open today? When can we take our paint to the convenience center? And what are our taxes? Are our taxes going up? Are they staying the same? What are we paying for? So you've got multiple audiences, and you've got one way to funnel to those people. I'm not personally interested in being interviewed or talking about anything that is a difference of opinion or creating any friction. You know, politically speaking, that's a mistake. Because, you know, we walk out of here, we might sit up here and be very passionate about what we're talking about, and Bump and I are a great example. A lot of times we agree on things, but when we don't agree, we're going to be the two that you catch out on that step. And, you know, what we want to do is walk out of here, get in our cars, and we're done with that night. We're done with that. We're done with that, you know. And so I think it's important that politically, once there's a vote and 4 people vote yay or nay, that's the vote. And so I'm not in favor of creating any more friction there. Another thing that I want to bring up, and this is just a little pet peeve of mine, but it's first person versus third person. And I think as a PIO, you take on, you are York County. You're not Greg Suskin. You are York County. And so and you have to always be, when you're on that Facebook page, or when you are, even in just talking to people, you're York County. And when you go on there and use the word I, let me look into that for you, or you can't go back and forth, so you have to commit to being third person York County. It's hard to do. But if you look at pages, I saw a great example one day of a page, and it's a group page, and every time the person posts, she says I. And I'm like, I thought you were a group. I thought you were, you know, you're a conglomerate. You're not an I. And so it just, I think that's important. So that, and knowing your audience, and let's see what else I wrote down here. So I'm saving a couple comments for this next little session regarding the planning and zoning and that communication. But I think another thing that's very important is, you know, when I first started coming to those council meetings, I sat in that audience and things moved really quickly. Even once you first get on this council, things move really quickly, and people can't keep up. They don't know. I mean, Tommy, oh my God, he's left. Tommy and, you know, me, when I was first on council, it's hard because those motions go so fast. People don't know a lot of times what we're talking about, and that's communication too. So what people see and how we handle ourselves up here and what we talk about, you know, sometimes, well, I remember back when I was first on council, and everything seemed to be like 3 initials. You know, we're talking tonight about increased involvement with SCAC. Well, the people watching this meeting tonight, they don't know what SCAC even is. You know, they've just now tuning into what YC is. And so I think we're at ground zero. It's where I think we are, and I think we've got so much that we can do, so much positive stuff and information and operations that we can put out there. I think the parks are huge. Thank you, Catherine, for that. I think that is a huge hook for York County to get more people involved and raise those numbers. So, I'll stop.
I think what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing us say similar things, and I think especially with the Notify Me, I think there is a real opportunity in hearing Watts's comments and hearing Bump, Allison, I think every person that spoke up here is, if there were, and I think you're already doing this, if you had a monthly, like, standard platform where you said, okay, economic development, is there anything to report on that? Planning and zoning, is there something like RECODE coming up? Or you ask that department head, is there something that needs to be addressed? And maybe for the first little time that we try this, we involve council and let us share that. When you've got special events coming up that are coming up that next month, even if it, ask the municipalities, the PIOs in there, you know, have a designated spot for special events, have a designated spot for Parks and Rec if there's something that's coming up. Have something like for the comp plan to say, you know, the comp plan's coming up and here's where we're meeting, or here's the budget and here's the, you know, adding that in there and being able to do that, maybe having one section on awards. And maybe add something that allows a district member to put a special message in there if needed. I don't know if there, but I think trying to set up an individual newsletter thing for each individual council or to try and educate that, I think that's difficult. But I do think having we already have the platform that allows you to do that, and then folks would get something, you know, monthly that has standard headings that, I mean, I think that I'm hearing that might be a tool that could be used, and maybe like I'm saying, the first few times let council see what you're looking at doing. I'm trying to troubleshoot the messaging. Do we have, and walk away from the meeting with a suggestion that we can rally behind? If folks were to check a box and say, hey, you know, I get the newsletters. I get the newsletters from the city of Rock Hill. I get them from Fort Mill. I mean, do y'all get those? Yeah, I think I checked with the Notify Me, and it has the option to do that. Right. I think even if it's quarterly, or I don't know that you can inform folks, but I think it has a dual possibility, like folks that are saying RECODE and they never knew RECODE was out there. That's kind of an initiative we're working on that could have been a standardized, here, we're doing this. If you want to come listen, come see that. If you're doing the comp plan.
You can only market to your audience. And we have a very limited audience. I mean, 20,000 people out of, I mean, it's 1% of our population. So you're not gonna, you can't market if you don't have the people. So you're, I mean, you can do a newsletter. I mean, Notify Me is very important. Notify Me is great. Notify Me takes the weight off of us having to inform people about things. But all you can do is market Notify Me. So that's something that should be, you know, pinned at the top of the page. So people, when they go on the Facebook page, they say, oh my gosh, what is this Notify Me? And don't just say, you know, don't just say Notify Me. It's boring. It's like boring to people. Put something on there and make it something that's a little bit exciting but more informative for people. And I just don't think that we can, you know, we can't make the basic government and what we do here real exciting. It's just not real exciting. If it were, they would be, these seats would be filled tonight. I mean, we're talking about the budget and we can't even fill up the seats. So I think people don't want to have to get involved. And so
agreed, but I think they like to know what's happening and see the positive things.
They do want to be informed, but they're not going to go to a lot of effort. We've got to, you know, fix their plate and deliver it to them. They're not going to get in line and fix their own plate. And I just think that's it's a cultural thing that we have to figure out and figure out, you know, how do we. I don't agree with putting municipality events on our page. I think we have to focus on the things that we've done for the people. Every single thing that we post on Facebook or the website should give a benefit. I walked out of here one night and there was a post on, I'm going to tell you what it was. It was the post about Riverview Road. And so as a person from Lake Wiley, representing Lake Wiley and Clover, we're getting ready to spend, you know, $17 million on a road in the city of Rock Hill. And I walked out of here and I'm like, okay, this is ahead of me because it happened kind of quick during the meeting, it was still going on. But at the same time, the comments on that page were negative because it's a ton of money and it's in the city of Rock Hill. It's not a county. It's not in the county. I mean, technically it's in the county, but it's the city of Rock Hill, and there was no benefit given in that post. So to me, I'm like, we missed an opportunity to tell people why are we doing it, And why is it costing this? In other words, if we're gonna tell the county story, let's tell the county story. Give the benefit. Don't post anything that doesn't benefit, that you don't give the benefits of. I mean, you just have to think like that, and it's hard to think like that. But you know, because you're from a news background, so you want to report news and stuff, and people want information, so that they're looking for that. But when it comes out and the comments go south on something like that, without really having the opportunity to get that horse back in the barn and really tell the full story, I think that's, not everything we do is good. Not everything we do is always going to be a positive, but I think we have to work toward that. I believe we have to work really hard toward that.
Do I hear any objections to us exploring the Notify Me as a way to kind of get the word out and maybe exploring that a little bit more?
There's nothing
If
to
that
explore.
includes the newsletter too, I'd like to.
I think
know
that's
more about
part of
that.
what, that's what we're saying is to basically do something that monthly has standardized captions to where, you know, Greg's asking the question, is there anything in planning and zoning that's on the horizon that needs to be reported? Is there a special event from Parks and Rec that needs to be mentioned? Is there an award? I mean, the RIA grant. I mean, that would be a great opportunity to say, well, look at what was just awarded.
What was that stand for?
Rural Infrastructure Authority.
That's what I'm talking about. You see, people don't know.
Well, I don't mean that. I mean, he needs to spell it out, yeah.
I know, but that's one of the key points, is that we talk in initials, and it's, they don't know what we're talking about. I didn't know what we were talking about. Heck, for 2 years, I didn't know what we were talking about. Some things I
So,
think
Christy,
that's a
you
plat-
said,
yeah.
Christy, you said explore. So who's going to take?
I think Greg's
over?
Greg that would be
So
a
that's
PIO
what we're asking
direction.
Greg to do, is to explore this and come back to council with a recommendation.
I think,
Incorporate it into what he's doing.
Yeah, everything doesn't have to be an exploration. I think the goal, I'm just gonna say what I think the goal is, and then y'all can agree or not agree. And then you can interview us out on the steps if you want to about it. But I think the goal is to make Notify Me, look at Notify Me and figure out, okay, so you got it by district. What are the other categories that could be a part of Notify Me? Let's promote. Let's not investigate. Let's promote Notify Me. And let's see how many people we can get signed up. And each council person should put it out to their district and say, hey, sign up for this. We're going to have a little contest and see how many people from District 2 versus District 6 or 4 or 1 can we get signed up for Notify Me. And then, what do you want to know about? Ask the people, what do you want to be notified about? Do you want to have a section for, hey, when something happened at Ebenezer? Put that in there. Do you want to know when something's happening at Allison Creek? Put that in there. And do you want to, I mean, they've already got the options of Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and all of that, the meat of what we do. So I just think you create, just enhance Notify Me. And
the only thing with Notify Me, though, is that right now it'll send you a text, and it'll say something very simple. I think a newsletter incorporation to this, like just something where you're doing what you're doing, but you're putting it in a format that's easier to read. It's like, here, you signed up for this, you'll get an email that says, this is what's going, maybe there's not something going on with economic development, but I think what we're saying is, let's let you explore the Notify Me. Let's beef that up, because that's where folks are going to go there and sign up for it. They're signing up to get that information, and then put out something monthly that addresses those questions so that folks, let's explore that. Let's do that.
The only reason I disagree with that in a way is that you're going to have maybe 5 different new things. And when you talk about doing a newsletter, that's individual newsletters, because everybody doesn't want to hear about everything. They only want to hear about what they've signed up for. So to do an individual newsletter type blast for those different categories would be very difficult.
I don't think it would be individual. I think you would center this on what's countywide news that needs to be reported to countywide.
Right, and just to say, currently, I think, I haven't checked it in a while, but I think currently there's somewhere around 1,900, between 1,900 and 2,100 subscribers to Notify Me. But that is broken down also by category. That's the whole number, but that's also some that follow this district or that district, some that follow news flash, some that get weather alerts. So there's got to be 40 or 50 different categories. But we have done some promotion of that. We have done some videos promoting Notify Me and seen more signups for that. But you can always add categories, so doing something different, adding more specific categories to send someone a text or an email would certainly be possible to do.
I think we should look at that. Any other topics on that piece of it? Do we want to turn into internal communications at all? I know
Yeah,
that there,
internal's good. I'll just say, for me, I would like to see a newsletter component to what we're doing. And I hear what you're saying, Allison, but I'd also like for the people in in District 6 to know what's going on in Lake Wiley. So this would be a way for them to have access to things that are going on throughout the county. Strawberry Festival last weekend would be something that would be in my newsletter. So I think a newsletter component needs to be a part of it. And I think, like you said, you touch on if it's planning and zoning, economic development, parks, roads, what Andy Clinton is over, what is it, Visit York County. So that, you got a link for visit. Yeah, right. So you got a link to that. You got contact information. So if somebody's not calling me about their road or their pothole, they're calling directly DOT or whatever. Because honestly, I didn't get elected to take those phone calls, even though I do and I handle them. You know, give them access to the people they need to be calling, which is not me or you all, in my opinion. But anyway,
I think that's a fantastic way to find new followers and let them, I mean, you know, and one of the things that I think this could benefit is folks who don't have the time, shouldn't depend on, I think it withstands the test of time to allow it to come from the county and for the county to be the message person than to rely on folks who may or may not have the time to do their own individual ones. Anyway, all right, internal. Do we want to talk about internal communications?
I'll kick us off. I'm not a loss for words, obviously, and I'm new to council, so I can use some of that as an excuse. One thing I've noticed, and I've mentioned this a number of times since I joined council, one thing I've noticed is we don't have a lot of communication publicly. There's a lot of communication that takes place in executive session that probably shouldn't take place in executive session. There's a lot of one-on-one communication that takes place, and then other people are left out. So one thing that I'd like to see change, and I know I'm being generic in what I'm saying, and I guess that's intentional, but we need to communicate a little more openly. And let me give an example. So all of us are on the transportation committee for council, but to my knowledge, there has not been a meeting for the transportation committee. When was the last transportation committee meeting? So that's the transportation committee? Okay. I thought we would have an actual designated meeting and maybe we'd get a report on pennies and anything else that was related to transportation. Okay? So
it happens right before council.
I guess I would think that if we were having a designated transportation meeting, something that we learned recently, I would have learned in a transportation committee meeting, and I wouldn't be in another meeting hearing a topic discussed that I knew nothing about. Sideblinded. So we don't have a set transportation meeting that, I know all of us are on the transportation committee, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, but it just happens when we talk about transportation, when someone comes to a meeting from our staff to talk about transportation?
Typically, staff initiates if there's a transportation issue that needs to be taken up, especially with the roads that have been approved by each district, or if there's a pennies update, which I think we did have one. I think, David, correct me if I'm wrong, that's usually called by Dean or by Patrick, or you guys work together to call one of those meetings?
Yeah, and my understanding is the transportation committee is primarily to authorize or choose the expenditure of C funds.
Mm-hmm.
I think we probably do pennies updates during that process and everything, but typically they're held before council meeting. They're fairly brief, and just an update on those two things, pennies and C fund.
Okay, so at a workshop, we talked about C funds where staff came up with a list of road projects that they thought needed to be paved with county staff. Is that what you're referring to as a meeting?
No, that wasn't C
No?
funds. That was gonna be some funds.
That was critical needs.
Yeah.
Okay, critical. Was that a transportation meeting?
That was not. That's
Okay.
that's budgetary. It happens with the budget cycle.
And
The CTC is for the C funds. Allison wants us not to talk in acronyms ever again.
I think you're associating the transportation committee just like me and you serve on the committee.
Yes.
But basically what, over the years, our transportation committee has been basically just C fund project. Then, of course, Patrick comes at the beginning
Quarterly.
of our meetings and gives us pennies updates. Patrick I don't think, has ever given a pennies update in a transportation committee meeting, because we typically start those at 5:55. Dean gets up there and says, hey,
I think he's come.
we come to approve the selected roads for pennies, or letting us know that, hey, we need to schedule some meetings to select these roads. So basically, our transportation committee meetings are just basically C-fund driven. Everything deals with C-funds. And that's just basically what it is.
Okay. All right.
In a lot of the counties, the CTC, the local delegation, picks that entity to allocate where the C funds get spent. York County is one of the few where county council serves as the entity that selects the C funds where they get to go be spent. So the CTC, the Transportation Committee, for Allison's sake, is specifically for spending the C funds money. That's its purpose.
Let me be specific without saying too much. So I attend a meeting where information's being shared with me on a topic that I know nothing about, and I'm expected to have a conversation, a decision on that in that meeting. And that meeting, or the content of that meeting should have happened at a transportation meeting, in my opinion. But I knew nothing about it, so we leave the meeting, and we didn't really have consensus on what direction we were going. And it just seems to me, going back to my original point, we don't talk about a lot of things publicly, and I get it, believe me. I think Greg stood up and he's talking about something he does every day and he's nervous. Can you imagine sitting up here and having a conversation on a topic that you really don't want to talk about publicly? But when are you going to talk about it with the group?
I'm not
You're
sure
going to
which,
talk about it one-on-one.
I'm not sure which issue you're talking about, but council can add anything. I've been a little surprised with the comments. I think we do a lot less of executive session than I know some of our other counterparts do. I think we do a lot of our stuff transparently. Issues that come up in open session, folks are free to debate that, discuss that. Anything on an agenda, council member and non-agenda comments can bring up comments that exist. When it comes to an action item that council has to take, sometimes we receive information, and that's typically the only time that we would go into executive sessions to receive legal advice on an issue. But if it comes to a decision that council has to make, that has to be put on the agenda and openly discussed and debated.
I can't think of, and not to belittle any point that you're making, I can't think of an issue that would have come up in a different setting that would have been reverted back to the Transportation Committee. Because basically, transportation is basically, hey, approving C-fund lists. Anything outside of that probably wouldn't come through transportation. So whoever tried to make that connection that it should have been going through transportation probably didn't understand what the Transportation Committee's functions are.
Well, that's probably me. When I joined council, I read through what every committee did, and transportation was a committee that said it's made up of all members. I just assumed that was a meeting that is set twice a year, once a year, where we talk about what's going on with transportation. We all were a part of a discussion on an issue involving transportation roads.
You talking about when we had our retreats?
I view roads and Highway 557. So
That would be pennies, and that would be something that we brought up when an action item would come up. So if we receive information, that's information that's received.
right, it would have been nice to have had a conversation before that topic came up so that we were more aware of what was going on instead of being blindsided by it.
I think on that point, I think it was simply to receive information that had been received just that day or the day before. And so there wasn't any action item to take. It was just receiving the information and getting legal advice.
Well, there was.
So when that item.
There was requested action, but we won't get into the details. We won't get into the details. I'm just saying that is an example of something that maybe we should have been discussing, and unfortunately, we would have had to discuss it publicly. But anyway.
No decisions have been made from information that's received on
Right.
that.
I'm clear. We don't have,
Any
we don't
other-
have set meetings. So I'm clear.
Well, we have, the CTC is a statutory requirement because our CTC is comprised of our council. Whenever we have a decision that is reserved to C-Fund money that's received from the state and how to allocate it. So the pennies issue is one that will come up on agendas when it's time for council, when there's a decision that council has to make on a pennies issue. In terms of internal communications, do we have any other requests or comments, or how can we improve internal communications? Ms. Cloninger?
Not to say that I love our planning department.
Yep, we are. Yep.
But this, I think, speaks more not to communication, because I've been thinking about this, as to procedure. And it just really bothers me, as I know some other folks are bothered about traffic impact studies and the fact that we are talking about rezoning various and sundry times, and we really need to talk about, do you want me to stop?
Conversation budget part, but why is, because if we were on Heckle, typically we are with a workshop, we're not.
Heckle's recorded now as well, so we try to record all our meetings.
Oh, okay. News to me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you want me, is it okay?
Yeah.
Is it okay, Buck?
Yeah, I just want to get that.
So, anyway, when we're looking at rezoning issues, it's very hard to really give, just to think about something and make a wise decision on it without a traffic impact study, because I've had a lot of personal experience being on Planning Commission that I have just been at a loss what to do. And unless you go and put eyes on the project and see where the project's located, what the road is like, and so forth, you're really lost. But so that is one thing that's near and dear to my heart, that I hope that we could talk this out and possibly get a change there if it's feasible. I do not know that. As Watt said, we're new. Maybe it's just not going to happen, but I hope it does. And then when we're looking at on the agenda, first reading on a project, that it's hard to, I sit there and I go 354 pages down to find the information about that first reading on a rezone, to get the little pictures and everything that the Planning Commission gets. We don't get it up front in our packet. We have to scroll all the way down. So if that would be something that we could maybe resolve some of that issue on a first reading for a rezone. Because rezones, we have a lot, all the time. So I feel like we need some good information on that.
So are you saying to include in the packets, the Planning Commission packet, and also to?
Well, it is sort of included, but it's way down. You have to sit there. I don't know if everybody scrolls through the 354 pages.
I think it's a different format. I do think that the Planning Commission does get different information than the council gets. It's not the exact same packet. Well, that's changed then.
So I think one thing that would help you, Debbie, is to get with Karen and let her show you, because when I first got on council, another issue was I would be reading something in the main part of the agenda and then not know, oh my gosh, I'd have to scroll through the whole thing to find it. There is a way, there's a little key and there's a way to go.
I think you did that for me way, way, way back the first meeting, and I forgot how to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know how to do that? I think we need a class.
Oh, yeah, you use it on your laptop especially. Sometimes the feature is not available unless you are in either on your iPad, or it doesn't, or you have to be on a laptop. You can't do it when you're on your phone and it doesn't translate over. I've experienced that.
And there's different formats depending on how you're looking at it, so it might be easier to show you, but we can sit down.
Okay. That would be very helpful. Okay. I'm still not going to give up on my traffic impact study, though. Okay. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay, Ms. Love.
So thank you, Jonathan, for giving the, when we have the rezonings, it's great to have that, the map, whether you're, Diana is presenting that, presenting that. One thing that would be helpful to me on that is if we have another picture that zones out, that shows, I'm sorry, zooms, not zones out, that zooms out, that shows just a better idea of where that actually is and what the surrounding area is, not so defined just on the neighborhood or what's those few parcels that are around it. What was the other thing? I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh, I was going to mention something that Watt said. You know, when you're talking about things that come up and you don't know, and we're all hit off guard with things a lot of times, but I think it's important. You know, we'll talk about 557. There's been a lot of discussion about 557, but it's easy to. And I would encourage anybody who has a question about something in my district to pick up the phone and just call me and ask me. If you want a full briefing on 557, I'll give you one. And you can hear from Patrick Hamilton, and between the two of us and county management, you'll have the full story on just about any topic that you want to know about. So I think that, you know, we don't meet and talk behind the scenes on things, but, you know, if something's happening in somebody's district, I'm gonna call that person and say, hey, what is it? If I'm expected to vote on this, or I can't think of a meeting that you would have been, you know, required to make a decision on. Maybe somebody was asking you for an opinion or something, but you know, just pick up that council person, and because I think we're all pretty familiar with what's going on in our own areas, and maybe we need to be more familiar with what's going on in other people's areas. But quite frankly, my plate is full of District 2, and I don't have time to really get involved in all the other different districts. But if there's something that you need me to get involved in your district, then I'm open to helping you or listening to you. And so I think that's kind of how we work as individual council members. And you know, we just again it's communication. You know, that's what we're talking about, is communication, and we have to communicate with each other as best we can. There's so much, and everybody's kind of focused on something different, different interests, different things in their districts, and everybody's kind of got a different focus and a different outlook. So it's just, I do think it's important. I think some of the best times we have are things like, you know, when we go to South Carolina Association of Counties and we can get together and we can talk and just kind of get to know each other, because a lot of us don't maybe know each other well enough. So internal, external, I think are both important. And internal, you know, I've often said that my political efforts are made internal between county management and between council members, and I think that's an important aspect of what we do. But again, we're back to the culture. What is the culture? And you know, when we're talking about, you know, I've chaired planning and zoning and was on the comp plan and ZBA before I got on council. But you know, I hear from a lot of developers that aren't happy, and you know, some of them are never going to be happy, and some of them aren't going to be as happy as others. But I think that it's important that the individual departments, and I'm just using this one as an example, I'm not picking on them, but it's the one that I know best, and that is that, you know, I think the communication with those people outside of the county and outside of council, that is very important communication. How they see us is very important, but not how they see us as a council, but how they see the individual departments in York County is very important. And at the end of the day, when you're leaving, you know, just think about, were you a 7 or were you a 10 that day? And did you call everybody back? And if you didn't, are you planning to call them back the next morning? You know, I'm in business of customer service, and if I don't get anything else right, I've got to get customer service right. So, again, I think we're back to what we promote as a culture, and it's, I mean, really, we kind of got a blank slate, because I'm not sure that we have much of one at this point. So, I think we have a lot of opportunity. I think this council has I've said this for the last year, that this next council is going to have a lot of opportunity. I think I started saying that last March, but a year ago, and I think this council's got a lot of opportunity. I think we look at things differently than council has in the past. I think we are more people-oriented than maybe ever before, and we just, you know, I would like for the county as a whole to get behind me and this council in our efforts to serve the people. You're not all elected, but you're hired, and I think we've all got the same, I do think we all have the same job, and that is to serve the people of York County. I'm done, I promise.
One of the things that I just remembered that I think is one difficult, well, two issues when it comes to communication. I think we've resolved one of them, and that's the economic development. Making sure that the council member whose district is being, not that they control the decision, but at least they're being brought along with the committee, just because the way that committee meets is very different. It can have far-reaching effects, but I understand that we've kind of got that down to where management's going to include the district representative, council chair, the committee chair for economic development. That committee is going to hear of those things. One thing that I would like to see us work on is if there's going to be a recommendation that requires us to look through something, and I think this has been echoed by a couple of others, if there's going to be a recommendation that we are being asked to consider, if we could see it before we walk in, being handed something that's 2 or 3 pages long and trying to digest it, think about it, have questions, be able to articulate a position on it, be prepared. That's very difficult to walk into a meeting and just have those things handed to you. I would ask to at least have, whenever agendas go out, at least that information be disclosed at the time so that council can be prepared to address those questions. Mr. Huckabee?
All right, I have to say this. So, Allison, I appreciate you acknowledging my comments earlier. The piece I'm hung up on is that when we went into the meeting to discuss 557, I was blindsided by the content of what we discussed. And my point is that it seems to me that there should have been some conversation with full council on that topic so that we were more aware of what was about to be discussed than to have it discussed with no background or content and then being expected.
I'm gonna have to stop. We're not gonna discuss anything that was brought into executive session. If there's an action item and when there is action that has to be taken by council, that will certainly be on the agenda and something that we'll discuss and debate.
Yeah, so we're talking about communication, and my point is that we have to communicate more publicly than behind the scenes. That's my point. And that's difficult to do because it can be controversial, but we almost have to do that. And I think if you're, well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Roddy?
I was just gonna echo something I think Tommy mentioned, or was mentioned on that side of the room. Let's face it, the reality of us getting our agendas on basically Thursday to work through it to Monday is very challenging. I know some people want to see every single email staff sends out when we're talking about communication. Some of us want to see very few communications. I'm one of the ones, I'm not in front of a computer, iPad, laptop all day. I don't like a lot of emails of interdepartment communication. Some people want to get down in the weeds, want to turn their nuts and bolts. That's not me. And if anybody feels like staff is not communicating enough directly with them, I think that needs to be a personal and not a council issue, because if I feel like I'm not getting enough information from David or Kevin or Michael or Trish or Kevin or anybody, that's a one-on-one thing, but I think we get enough emails trying to keep us abreast of what's going on now. Specific projects may be different, but everybody's interest level, whether it's from planning to zoning to economic development to CVB to PIO, everybody's interest level is like this with all different subjects. I don't want everybody's emails from department head to David, department heads to Kevin, or emails legal's getting. I think we get enough, but if somebody's appetite wants more, talk to whoever you're not getting that communication from, and let's not make this a council issue saying we have a communication issue. Maybe you need to communicate to that individual, hey, I would like some more information from now on, whatever you're doing. Let's not wait till something, ironically, oh, I didn't get that email, I didn't get this update, and now all of a sudden it's a communication issue. Because don't copy me on everything that you're doing from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I don't want to know that. And I know some people who are like that. They want to know every single thing that's going on, and that's not all of us. So let's make it relevant to the individual and what their personal needs are for them to be satisfied. And I'll go on the record and say, I don't want 100 emails a day. I don't have time for that. Give me the essentials, and if I want more information from this particular subject, I'll say, hey, can you give me some more of what's going on? Bring me up to speed. And that's, voice communication, that's where I'm at on it.
Less emails, okay, so one thing about communication, and this has to do with your districts, your individual districts. We have some issues that we're dealing with now, coming up, where, you know, emails are sent to us about the issues. And when those emails are shared with a company that might be interested or wants to come into your district, and that person's name was not taken off the email, and that's private information, and it was not shared for with a particular council person that is their district, then you know, kind of that's what I'm dealing with, where you're upset about a road issue. I'm upset about an email that was privately sent, a private email that was addressed to us, the council, was sent to a company with that person's name on it. That should never happen. I hope you agree with me. And I hope it will never happen again.
So let me be clear. I'm not upset about a road issue. I'm concerned about the way we communicated about the road issue. There's a difference.
I'm upset about the way that the lack of communication with me over an email that was sent to us by a constituent that went to a company that I never knew about until recently. Did you not think you should have copied me on that?
So this is what I'm gonna say about this. I think the most appropriate way to address this is globally, what I'm hearing is, and I've heard it from several council members now, when there is an issue that impacts your district, I think as a matter of respect, when it comes to council communications, it would be respectful to that council member to communicate with them about that issue before or as part of whatever due diligence is being done. So I think that's something that I've heard echoed from several council members, and I think that's something that typically we all should try to incorporate. When it comes to internal communications, one of the things that I do want to make clear is that there are times where there is information that is shared to council, where legal information is shared. When it is time for, or when management decides that there's an action item, that is the perfect time to bring up and debate and discuss and talk about that. If there is no council action item that has been put on an agenda, then you can't debate it then. I mean, that's the distinction. So I just want to circle our comments back to internal communications. Are there any other, are there any other things that we can ask as a council that be done collectively, either via the information we see from management, information we feel like we're not getting collectively from management? Is there some other way to approach that?
Did you have anything in mind that you wanted to discuss that we haven't discussed?
I think that we've talked about all the issues that were raised at the retreat. I know that you had raised some questions about having communications with and better communications with our municipalities. I don't know if that's one piece that we haven't talked about, or if you want to, if that's important to you.
I think it is important to the county, but I don't think we could even have that conversation until we have a lawsuit settled with one municipality that's in the county, and then we can probably have a conversation about all municipalities. But I think it'd be premature to do that now.
I think your point is well made. Any other, do we have any other communication comments, anything? Anything else on communication? Any other feedback that we want? This is our opportunity to use it to tell management to set policy about how we want to receive information as a council. If I don't hear anything from y'all, I'm going to assume that you're getting the information you need from management.
Well, I just think that sometimes we need more information on stuff. If we get on Thursday evening or Friday morning, then a lot of stuff is closed where you can't even contact me if it's a Monday and the council meeting's coming up, I mean, we've always worked around it, but I don't even know if you can do that. Might be.
It does make it difficult. It's a short time frame. I mean, if y'all want to speak about this, this has been brought up when I first got on council. I brought this up, and I've been given the message that this is the way Minute Track is done. I mean, I would love for y'all to speak to that, because I think several council has struggled with why in the world do we only have a few days, and it's hard to get our questions answered on Monday. Everybody's scrambling to ask their question on Monday. Or
I think it's really just to have a function of having a 2-week cycle. You have meetings every 2 weeks, so as soon as we finish meeting Monday night, we start on drafting the agenda for the next week. People start loading their agenda items into the Minute Track. We approve them internally. We have to have reviewed by supervisors, reviewed by legal, reviewed by management, and then we have a agenda meeting on Wednesday, so that would, we could pull the agenda meeting back to Monday or Tuesday. That pulls everything back, and it's just hard to cram all that in a 2-week period. We could probably shave a day or two off of that. We could look at that, where you might get the agenda Wednesday or something earlier, but that's going to be a challenge for us to process all that information in that amount of time, but we can certainly look at it.
any other comments from council or requests from council on communications before we have an executive session?
I'd just like to ask a question. So we've made a change to the committee minutes. So when we have an economic development committee or a planning and zoning committee or finance and operations committee, those minutes are, they, rather than coming to council where council was not at that meeting and doesn't know, it's hard for you to sign off on something on a meeting that you were not in. So we've changed that so that that comes back to the committee for approval. But I do feel like those minutes still should be somehow in the packet, in the agenda packet, so that so that full council is actually ultimately signing off on approved minutes from a committee meeting. So it's just basically the committee's gonna get it, and then the full council will get it again, just in consent agenda.
Correct me if I'm wrong, don't council get notifications of all committee meetings and everything? They get packets, anything that's included in that, which would include the minutes, they get copies of that as well, as soon as those are done and approved.
But the public's not seeing, in other words, if we don't put the Finance and Operations Committee meeting minutes ultimately in the consent agenda, is the public seeing that? Are they?
Yeah, the committee meetings are public.
Okay, so they're having to reach out, again, they're having to reach out to different avenues to look at different committee meeting agendas, where they may say, hey, I want to see what's going on at the Planning and Zoning Committee, or I may want to see what's going on in Economic Development Committee. They're having to go to those individual minutes. They're not seeing that in the council agenda again. That was my point.
Do we?
I mean, Allison, I'm just gonna say, if I'm looking for, let's say, some F&O minutes, that's what I wanna see, and I'm a citizen, like City Rock Hills agenda or anything else like that, I go to the F&O minute itself and click on it. It's a lot easier to find than if it was buried in our council agenda. Our council agenda would be several hundred pages. So, I mean, I don't think it's
They've been in
harder.
there up until this past month. They've been in that agenda.
I get that, but I think it's, and this just I might be completely wrong on this, but I think it's easier to find those minutes for those specific committee meetings when you go to our website and you can click right on that committee, because the minutes are right there. I just think it's easier to find that way.
I know when I was looking up the library board too, they do all of the different boards and commissions, they approve them that way and they post them in that specific area. Do we have any other questions, comments on communications before we do what I understand is a very brief executive session? Yes, we do.
I move that we go to executive session to receive legal advice and boards and commissions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we will move straight into executive session. Executive session, no action was taken. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are closed.